Hey, brothers and sisters, are Americans being conditioned for a catastrophic event? I was listening to Alex Newman the other day give his insight on the crises that they are pushing to, in a way, condition Americans to crises that that will be on the horizon. And what was interesting was I was watching TV and saw an ad, a commercial for Ready.gov. And so I decided to go to this website, and I'm going to post a few screenshots here so that you can see the website that I went to, Ready.gov, and it's obviously a website of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And what's interesting is you can see different things that you're supposed to be prepared for: weather, earthquakes, emergency alerts. Um, you can go so far as to get the FEMA mobile app. And then also, if you scroll to disasters and emergencies, you see the various things that you're supposed to be prepared for. Now, obviously, a lot of these things we've seen in the past, but we're seeing an increase of these things, and probably even more so regarding cybersecurity in the future. What I want to do is I want to play this 3-minute clip by Alex Newman because he does such a good job kind of wrapping everything up and summarizing what they are doing to condition America, or rather the world, for catastrophic events. And then I want to play another clip from an expert regarding the power grid. I pray this is a blessing to you as far as information. I will include the link to Alex Newman's full interview with Brandon House. I highly suggest you listen to it, and it's posted on my Rumble page. God bless.
If you want to know the policy of the United States a few years in advance, all you got to do is read the Journal of the Council on Foreign Relations. It's called Foreign Affairs. Well, about 10 years ago, I started noticing that the CFR over and over and over again was pounding the drum for what they described as a multipolar world order. This is a term that your average American never heard before maybe a few months ago when Putin and some of these other different governments from around the world started using it. But this is being engineered by the CFR. So what happened was they hijacked our government. They harnessed the economic and the military power of the United States of America, of the American people, and then they used that to basically put the pieces into place so that this new world order that they've been seeking could come about. But now they still have this problem. They have this superpower based on, at least foundationally, on principles that come out of the Bible, the idea that God created us equally, the idea that he gave us all rights, the idea that the government must punish evil, people who violate your right to life, people who violate your right to property by killing or stealing. And so they've got a major problem. And so it was very clear to me, even early on in my journalistic career when I started, that eventually they were going to pull the rug out from underneath the United States government, from underneath the US dollar. We seem to be approaching that moment very, very rapidly. And it's at the point now where they're talking about this kind of stuff openly. And I suspect that it will probably be coming sooner rather than later. Like you, I'm not a date setter. I'm not going to say it's going to be next week or next year, but I suspect that it's coming. It's coming very rapidly, and I think in a very short period of time. I mean, maybe even overnight, people will wake up and find out that their dollars are worth significantly less than they were before. I do believe that'll spark a global economic crisis, a global monetary crisis, and they've got the pieces. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday. They've got the pieces waiting in the wings. They've got the CBDCs that they want to bring in. The International Monetary Fund has been groomed now for decades to supply the one world currency once the dollar loses its place. So there may be an interim step, and they've talked about this publicly in the CFR Journal and things. Should we go toward regionalized currencies? Right? Vicente Fox talked openly about a North American currency. So did Paul Cellucci, the U.S. ambassador under George W. Bush. They talked about a North American currency, so that's a possibility. But I think there's a very good possibility also that they could do like they advertised in the Economist magazine in 1988 and just go straight for the one world currency run by the IMF, which would be they call it the special drawing rights. It's a needlessly complex name. For basically what is a global fiat currency based on a basket of global fiat currencies, including the US dollar. So I do feel like we're getting very close, Brandon. When you have the Saudis and the Chinese openly talking about this, and one more data point, and then I'll stop rambling. During the Obama administration, at the Council on Foreign Relations, again of all places, Timothy Geithner, who was the Treasury Secretary, was asked by a reporter about the Chinese proposal. It was actually a proposal put out by the People's Bank of China, the central bank. about just moving directly toward a one world currency managed by the IMF for international purposes. And Timothy Geithner was asked about this plan, and his remarks, I think, dropped everybody's jaw to the floor. He said, "Yeah, we're actually quite open to that." And right after that, the dollar plummeted, right, relative to other currencies. So we know the same people that were running the Obama administration are still running the show under the Biden administration. The people in the U.S. government want this to happen at the highest levels, not your average member of Congress or even your average bureaucrat, but at the highest levels, this decision has been made, and it's going to come, and it's going to take most people by surprise.
So, cyber attack is only one of multiple threat vectors that threaten the U.S. critical infrastructures, but particularly the electric grid. And the reason that the electric grid has been my primary focus is because all of the other 16 critical infrastructures in the U.S. depend on the electric grid. So the electric grid is literally the Achilles heel of the United States. If somebody unplugs the electric grid, all of our critical infrastructures fail. We saw an example of that in the Texas blackout in February of 2021, where we had millions of Texans on boil water orders due to the collapse of the water infrastructure when the grid went down. We saw the grocery store shelves emptied. We saw gas stations with no gas in Texas because the transportation infrastructure had been impacted. But most importantly, we saw 250 people at least perish as a result of that blackout, mainly dying of hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning, and failure of home medical equipment, all which are directly attributable to the loss of the electric grid. We've also seen catastrophic loss of human life in, for example, Hurricane Maria, where Puerto Rico's electric grid was taken out for a long period of time, and people went without access to potable water for months. They went without access to electricity for months. And as a result of that, we'll never know how many people for sure died as a result of the loss of the electric grid in Hurricane Maria, but the latest estimates were between 3,000 to 4,000 people died as a result of the power being out in Hurricane Maria. So of all of our critical infrastructures, the electric grid is the one that worries me the most, because all the other ones depend on it.